The death of the V12. What they aren't telling you. There are sounds that define an era. The roar of a Ferrari V12 climbing toward 9,000 revolutions per minute. The scream of a Lamborghini accelerating through a mountain tunnel. The mechanical symphony of 12 perfectly synchronized cylinders. For generations, these sounds represented far more than horsepower. They represented freedom, engineering perfection, and the very soul of the automobile. But today, that sound is slowly disappearing. Not because engineers forgot how to build incredible engines. Not because customers stopped loving them. But because the world around them has changed. Governments are rewriting the rules, emission standards are becoming stricter every year. Electrification is advancing faster than anyone imagined. And the most legendary engine in automotive history is now fighting for survival. So, is this really the end of the V12? Or is there still hope? Today we're uncovering the story every car enthusiast needs to hear. This is the death of the V12. To understand why this matters so much, we need to travel back nearly 80 years. Long before carbon emissions became global headlines, long before hybrid technology, long before electric supercars, there was one engine configuration that stood above all others, the V12. Enzo Ferrari believed that a true Ferrari deserved 12 cylinders. It wasn't simply about producing more power. A V12 delivered perfect balance, incredible smoothness, instant throttle response, and a sound unlike anything else on Earth. Every explosion inside those 12 cylinders blended into one continuous mechanical orchestra. It didn't simply accelerate. It sang. During the 1950s and 1960s, Ferrari's V12-powered racing cars became legends. Then came Lamborghini. Ferruccio Lamborghini wanted to challenge Ferrari on its own territory. Instead of building another grand touring car, he created something revolutionary. In 1966, the Lamborghini Miura arrived. Many historians consider it the world's first true supercar. Its naturally aspirated V12 sat behind the driver, creating proportions and emotions the automotive world had never experienced before. From that moment on, the V12 became the ultimate symbol of automotive excellence. The Countach, the Diablo, the Murcielago, the Aventador, Ferrari's Testarossa, the Enzo, the F12 Berlinetta, and the incredible 812 Superfast. These weren't just cars. They became dreams. They became works of art. Owning a V12 wasn't about transportation. It was about emotion. But every legend eventually faces its greatest challenge. Ironically, that challenge didn't begin inside Ferrari or Lamborghini. It began inside government offices around the world. As concerns over climate change grew, countries introduced increasingly strict environmental regulations. Europe led the movement with ambitious emission standards designed to dramatically reduce carbon dioxide output. The upcoming Euro 7 regulations are among the toughest ever created, making it increasingly difficult for large naturally aspirated engines to survive. For manufacturers, this isn't simply an engineering problem. It's an economic one. A V12 consumes more fuel, produces more emissions, costs more to manufacture, and requires massive investments to satisfy regulations across dozens of countries. The uncomfortable truth is that Ferrari and Lamborghini aren't abandoning the V12 because they stopped loving it. They're doing everything they can to keep it alive under rules that become more demanding every single year. So how do you preserve tradition while embracing the future? The answer came in the form of hybrid technology. Lamborghini introduced the Revuelto, combining a naturally aspirated V12 with 3 electric motors. Ferrari embraced hybridization as well, proving with cars like the 296 GTB that incredible performance no longer depends on engine size alone. On paper, these new machines are extraordinary. They're faster, more efficient, more technologically advanced than many of the legendary V12s that came before them. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Among enthusiasts, one question continues to divide opinions. Can a hybrid ever replace the emotional purity of a naturally aspirated V12? Can software recreate mechanical passion? Can silent acceleration replace the unforgettable soundtrack of 12 cylinders working together? For some, absolutely. For others, never. Because emotion cannot be measured by horsepower alone. So what happens next? Will future generations ever experience the sound that inspired millions of enthusiasts? Or will museums become the only places where the V12 still lives? there may still be one final hope. Synthetic fuels, often called e-fuels, could allow internal combustion engines to continue operating while dramatically reducing their environmental impact. Companies like Porsche are investing heavily in this technology, hoping that one day these legendary engines might continue their journey without conflicting with future environmental goals. Whether that dream becomes reality remains uncertain, but one thing is certain. The story of the V12 has never been just about horsepower. It is the story of engineers refusing to compromise, of designers creating rolling sculptures, of drivers chasing emotion instead of efficiency. The automotive world will continue evolving. Electric technology will become even faster. Hybrid systems will become even smarter. But no matter how advanced tomorrow becomes, there will always be something magical about hearing 12 cylinders come to life. The V12 may eventually disappear from production lines, but it will never disappear from history. Its sound, its emotion, and its legacy will continue inspiring generations of enthusiasts long after the last one leaves the factory. So now the question is yours. Can Ferrari still be Ferrari without a naturally aspirated V12? Can Lamborghini keep its soul in an electric future? Or are we witnessing the end of the greatest chapter in automotive history? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if you love the stories behind the world's greatest automobiles, subscribe to Car Evolution. Because cars evolve, but legends never die. The death of the V12, what they aren't telling you. There are sounds that define an era. The unmistakable roar of a Ferrari V12 climbing toward 9,000 revolutions per minute. The violent scream of a Lamborghini echoing through a mountain tunnel. The mechanical harmony of 12 perfectly synchronized cylinders firing one after another, creating a soundtrack capable of sending chills down the spine of anyone who loves cars. For decades, this wasn't just the sound of speed. It was the sound of ambition. The sound of engineering pushed beyond reason. The sound of dreams becoming reality. For nearly 70 years, the V12 engine has stood at the very top of the automotive world. It powered the fastest Ferraris, the wildest Lamborghinis, and some of the most desirable machines ever built. To own a V12 wasn't simply to own a powerful car. It meant owning a piece of history, a masterpiece of engineering, and a symbol of success recognized across the globe. But today, something extraordinary is happening. One of the greatest inventions in automotive history is slowly disappearing. Not because engineers have forgotten how to build it, not because customers have stopped loving it, but because the world itself has changed. Governments are introducing stricter environmental laws than ever before. Emission standards continue to tighten every year. Electric technology is advancing at an incredible pace, while manufacturers are under enormous pressure to reduce carbon emissions and reinvent the future of mobility. And standing directly in the middle of that transformation is one legendary engine, the V12. For many enthusiasts, losing the V12 feels like watching the final chapter of an incredible story. A story filled with racing victories, revolutionary designs, unforgettable sounds, and machines that inspire generations of dreamers. But is this really the end? Or is there still one final chance to save one of the greatest engines humanity has ever created? To answer that question, we first need to understand why the V12 became so legendary in the first place. Because its story didn't begin with Ferrari, and it certainly won't end with regulations. Its roots stretch back more than a century, when engineers were searching for the perfect balance between smoothness, power, and reliability. Early automobile engines were often rough and unrefined. They vibrated heavily, produced inconsistent power, and struggled at higher speeds. Engineers quickly realized that increasing the number of cylinders could dramatically improve engine balance while allowing smaller, lighter pistons to move more efficiently. The result was remarkable. A 12-cylinder engine delivered exceptional smoothness, unlike anything drivers had experienced before. Power arrived effortlessly. Vibrations almost disappeared. High engine speeds became possible without sacrificing reliability. For luxury manufacturers and racing teams alike, the V12 represented the ultimate engineering solution. Then, after the Second World War, one man transformed that engineering achievement into pure emotion. His name was Enzo Ferrari. Unlike many manufacturers that viewed engines as simple mechanical components, Enzo believed the engine was the heart of every automobile. Everything else, the body, the interior, the suspension, existed to serve the engine. And in his eyes, the perfect Ferrari deserved 12 cylinders. Throughout the 1950s, Ferrari's V12-powered racing cars dominated circuits across Europe. Victories at Le Mans, Mille Miglia, and Formula One established Ferrari as one of the most respected names in motorsport. But something even bigger was happening. The technology developed on the racetrack was finding its way into road cars. Suddenly, wealthy enthusiasts could experience machines inspired by racing legends. Every press of the accelerator delivered not only breathtaking performance, but also an emotional connection between driver and machine that very few automobiles have ever managed to reproduce. The Ferrari V12 became more than an engine. It became a philosophy, a promise that every drive should feel unforgettable. And then, another Italian visionary decided he could do even better. Ferruccio Lamborghini had never planned to become Ferrari's greatest rival. He was already a successful industrialist, building tractors that helped rebuild post-war Italy. His business was thriving, and like many wealthy entrepreneurs of the time, he rewarded himself with beautiful sports cars. Among them were several Ferraris. But despite their incredible performance, Ferruccio believed they weren't perfect. He admired their speed, yet he found them unreliable and uncomfortable for everyday driving. Legend has it that after experiencing repeated clutch problems, he visited Enzo Ferrari himself to suggest improvements. The meeting did not go as planned. According to the famous story, Enzo dismissed his criticism, telling Ferruccio to stick to building tractors and leave sports cars to Ferrari. Whether every detail of that conversation is true or not hardly matters today, because what happened next changed automotive history forever. Ferruccio decided to build his own grand touring car, not simply to compete with Ferrari, but to beat Ferrari. In 1963, Automobili Lamborghini was born. Only 3 years later, the company unveiled a car that shocked the entire automotive world. The Lamborghini Miura. At first glance, it looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. It sat impossibly low to the ground, with elegant curves that made it appear almost alive. But its true revolution was hidden beneath the bodywork. Instead of placing the V12 at the front like traditional Grand Tourers, Lamborghini mounted it behind the driver. The result transformed the entire driving experience. Better weight distribution, sharper handling, more dramatic proportions, and breathtaking performance. Many historians still consider the Miura to be the world's first true supercar. It wasn't simply fast. It was emotional. It was theatrical. Proof that performance could be art. From that moment forward, Ferrari and Lamborghini became locked in one of the greatest rivalries the automotive world has ever witnessed. Each new model pushed the limits even further. Ferrari answered with masterpieces like the Daytona, the Testarossa, the F40, the Enzo, the F12 Berlinetta, and eventually the astonishing 812 Superfast. Lamborghini responded with icons that defined entire generations. The Countach, whose futuristic wedge shape became every teenager's bedroom poster. The Diablo, faster and more aggressive than anything before it. The Murcielago, whose V12 announced its presence long before the car appeared. And finally the Aventador, perhaps the last pure expression of Lamborghini's naturally aspirated, 12-cylinder philosophy. Every generation became more powerful, more beautiful, more unforgettable. Yet despite their differences, Ferrari and Lamborghini always agreed on one thing. The V12 wasn't just another engine. It was the soul of the car. It defined the personality of each model. The throttle response, the vibration, the sound, the emotion. Every startup became a ceremony. Every tunnel became an opportunity to lower the windows. Every acceleration reminded the driver why these machines were considered rolling works of art, rather than simple transportation. Owning a V12 wasn't about reaching your destination faster. It was about enjoying every second of the journey. For decades, it seemed impossible to imagine Ferrari or Lamborghini without 12 cylinders. The V12 had become their identity, their signature, their reason for existing. But while engineers continued perfecting these incredible machines, the world outside the factory gates was beginning to change. Governments, scientists, and environmental organizations were all asking the same question. How long could engines like these continue to exist in a world determined to reduce emissions? And for the first time in history, the future of the V12 no longer depended on engineers. It depended on politics, economics, and the rapidly changing priorities of an entire planet. For decades, automotive engineers competed to build engines that were bigger, louder, and more powerful than ever before. Today, the competition has completely changed. Manufacturers are no longer judged only by horsepower or top speed. They are judged by efficiency, by emissions, by sustainability. Around the world, governments have introduced increasingly strict environmental regulations designed to reduce carbon dioxide emissions and improve air quality. Europe has led that movement with some of the toughest automotive standards ever created. The upcoming Euro 7 regulations represent one of the biggest challenges the industry has ever faced. Unlike previous standards, they don't simply measure emissions under ideal laboratory conditions. They demand cleaner performance in real-world driving, over longer periods of time, and under far more demanding situations. For manufacturers producing small city cars, adapting is already expensive. For companies building naturally aspirated V12 supercars, the challenge is enormous. A 12-cylinder engine consumes more fuel than a smaller engine. It produces more carbon dioxide. It requires more materials to manufacture. And meeting modern environmental standards often demands complex engineering solutions that dramatically increase development costs. The reality is simple. Building a V12 has never been more difficult, and keeping one legal has never been more expensive. This is why the automotive world has entered a new era, an era of downsizing, turbocharging, and hybrid technology. Some enthusiasts see this as the death of performance. Ironically, the opposite is true. Electric motors deliver maximum torque almost instantly. They eliminate turbo lag, improve acceleration, and work alongside combustion engines to produce levels of performance that were almost unimaginable only a decade ago. Lamborghini understood that abandoning the V12 entirely would mean abandoning part of its identity. So instead of replacing it, the company evolved it. The Lamborghini Revuelto still carries a naturally aspirated V12 behind the driver. But now, it works together with 3 electric motors and a sophisticated hybrid system. The result is astonishing. More than 1,000 horsepower, instant acceleration, lower emissions, and performance capable of outperforming nearly every Lamborghini that came before it. Ferrari has followed a similar philosophy. Although the Ferrari 296 GTB replaces 12 cylinders with a compact hybrid V6, it proves that modern technology can extract extraordinary performance from much smaller engines. On paper, these cars are masterpieces. They accelerate faster, handle better, consume less fuel, and meet regulations that older supercars could never satisfy. But statistics don't tell the whole story. Because the greatest debate surrounding the future of supercars has never been about speed. It's about emotion. Ask almost any passionate enthusiast what they remember most about a Ferrari Enzo or a Lamborghini Aventador, and very few will begin by talking about horsepower. Instead, they'll describe the sound, the feeling, the goosebumps that appeared every time the engine started, the way the entire car seemed alive. That emotional connection is incredibly difficult to recreate. Electric motors are silent. Hybrid systems are astonishingly efficient. But efficiency has never made someone's heartbeat faster. Emotion has. That's why the future remains uncertain. Some believe fully electric supercars will eventually become accepted, just as automatic transmissions replace manual gearboxes in many high-performance cars. Others believe something irreplaceable will disappear forever. Yet there may still be one final possibility. Synthetic fuels, also known as e-fuels. Unlike traditional gasoline, synthetic fuels are produced using renewable energy together with captured carbon dioxide, allowing combustion engines to operate while dramatically reducing their overall environmental impact. Manufacturers like Porsche have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into developing this technology. If synthetic fuels become commercially viable and governments choose to support them, engines like the V12 could continue surviving for decades, not as everyday transportation, but as engineering masterpieces preserved for future generations. Whether that future becomes reality remains impossible to predict. What we do know is this: the V12 has already changed automotive history forever. It inspired generations of engineers. It created some of the most beautiful automobiles ever designed. It transformed ordinary roads into unforgettable experiences. And it reminded us that cars could be more than machines. They could become art. Today, the automotive world stands at a crossroads. One road leads toward electrification, artificial intelligence, and technologies capable of making tomorrow's supercars faster than anything we can imagine today. The other road leads back toward the raw mechanical emotion that made millions of people fall in love with automobiles in the first place. Perhaps the future isn't about choosing one over the other. Perhaps it's about finding a way for both worlds to coexist. Because progress doesn't have to erase history, and innovation doesn't have to silence emotion. The V12 may one day disappear from production lines, but it will never disappear from our memories. Its roar will continue echoing through racetracks, through mountain roads, through museums, through classic car gatherings, and through every enthusiast fortunate enough to hear one come to life. Legends are not measured by how long they are produced. They are measured by the mark they leave on history. And by that measure, the V12 will live forever. So now we'd like to hear from you. Do you believe Ferrari and Lamborghini can keep their soul without a naturally aspirated V12? Or do you think we're witnessing the end of the greatest engine ever created? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through automotive history, don't forget to subscribe to Car Evolution, where every story reminds us that technology may change, but true legends never fade.